Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you're watching this. Welcome to each of you. The three of us are here to share with you some of our recollections about the beginnings of this great venture called Commitment to Justice in Jesuit Higher Education. Those beginning time periods were really 1998 meetings and that have led to eventually where you are here today. Some information about myself before I introduce my colleagues who will then help launch our conversation. I retired from Loyola University Chicago in July of 2020, where I was in the Department of Sociology and also taught in the Peace, Justice, and Conflict Studies program. Prior to Loyola, I was the founding director of the Center for Social Justice Research, Teaching and Service at Georgetown University, which is, of course, hosting this conference. And prior to that, I was at the University of Notre Dame for approximately 550 years. It's been my privilege to have been at every one of the justice conferences, including two of the three regional conferences that led up to the famous and first national one at the University of Santa Clara in 2000. And I had the privilege of serving on the planning committee with Dave for a number of years. He lasted longer. Let me introduce the two conversation partners. Jerry Cavanagh is a member of the Society of Jesus, a professor of management and business ethics at the University of Detroit Mercy. Jerry was provost at UDM when this all started, and he has served on the boards of trustees of 7 of our Jesuit universities. Dave McMenamin is a recently retired member of the philosophy department at Boston College, where he served for 20 plus years as the director of BC's stellar program called Pulse. Okay, you two, help us get started on this conversation.
Okay, to give some background on the conference, it was the initiative really came from the president of Santa Clara, Jesuit Father Paul Locatelli. He's the one that conceived the idea and really started it rolling. Initially, the plan was to have 3 regional conferences leading up to the national conference that we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of now. And that was also at Santa Clara. But the 3 regional conferences were, in the East was at Boston College, the West Regional Conference was at Santa Clara. And then the Central Conference was originally going to be in Loyola, Chicago, centrally located. But then Paul intervened and he said, well, wait a minute, let's get a Jesuit university that really acts out the Jesuit principles of special concern for the poor, the dispossessed, those that don't have the opportunities. Let's do it at the University of Detroit, where there are a large number of African-American students and a very large number of first-generation students. So we hosted. Well, we got the call from Bill Spohn, who was helping at that time with the conference. And he called me and he said, would you be willing to host it? I thought, oh my God, I'm provost, am I going to be able to do that? And well, I asked Father Art McGovern if he would be willing to help, be a backup. And he said, yes, he would. So I thought, oh, that's a break, because he's just a brilliant organizer in any case. So we agreed then to host the Midwest Conference. The regional conferences really encouraged every university to begin to write up their best practices. And this ended up being a binder, of an inch or so thick, from every Jesuit university, all 28 then, of each of our schools. The advantage of that was twofold in my mind. One is that it surfaced the best practices, and some of us were much further ahead. Some of the schools were further ahead than others. And so we'd be able to pick up ideas from other places. But secondly, it also was a challenge to each of the universities to do an assessment. Where do we stand? What are we doing? What are our practices that we have here at our university? And so those were two of the advantages, if you will. In the final conference at Santa Clara, each university, the regional conferences, we were limited how many people could come, but especially that was true. Only 20 could come to the Santa Clara Conference. Mostly academics, there were deans and that sort of thing at Santa Clara. Also, well, one final note here, second to the final note, two heroes of mine were the two Jesuits, Paul Locatelli, who started the whole operation, and Art McGovern, who just had some terrific ideas as we were moving along. And actually, we've been talking about this for a while, and David mentioned last time that it was Art's idea that ideas should bubble up from the bottom, from individuals, and that's where the idea of writing up the best practices came. At the national conference at Santa Clara that we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of, a couple of standout things in my mind. One of them was an address by Leon Panetta, who then was a congressperson from Santa Cruz and a graduate of Santa Clara. It was a terrific talk, really embodied a lot of social justice issues. And you remember later, he was the first guy helping the president of the US and then later Secretary of Defense. And a second outcome, if you will, is that, well, of course, we know that Peter Hans Kalvenbach, our Jesuit general, gave the major talk at that event. And this has been much quoted since. You've heard it over and over again. But one of the points he made that, that isn't always quoted as much, and that is a measure of our success in doing social justice is who our students become. What kind of people are there? Just a last couple of points. I think we see a couple, and you'll hear a lot more about this, I'm sure, in this conference. But some outcomes are, first, our current Jesuit Superior General, Arturo Sosa, has again bubbled up from below, and I'm sure you were all involved in this. What are apostolic preferences, across the world? And so there are 4 of those. And again, you'll hear a lot more about those, I'm sure. But the second one, I think that maybe a lot of you may not be aware of, is that it also, I think, was a stimulus for what we're calling a new paradigm for Jesuit business education. And this was set up by deans of Jesuit business schools from, again, all over the world. And Father Mike Garanzini headed that. And I think if you have, this is really, at least the introductory material would be appropriate for any program in any of our Jesuit universities. So I'd recommend you take a look at that.
Terrific. Dave, take it away.
Okay, I don't want to repeat too much of what Jerry said, but I do want to add a couple of things, including a couple of names. I will start by endorsing strongly his comments about Art McGovern and the role he played in this. That whole getting content to bubble up from below was critical. And the way it worked for us was that as we on the committee attended the regional conferences, what we were hearing was not our agenda being filled out, but the agenda that was being dictated by the people who came. And that was how the Santa Clara agenda got structured. It was taken from all the content of those regional conferences, because Art's point was that we should never be in a position as a committee to dictate the contents. And I think that was a really powerful stimulus. And also, I think that's one of the sustaining elements of all of this. To that, I also want to add, though, the name of Michael Buckley, a Jesuit who was at the time at Boston College as the head of the Center for Jesuit Studies. And Michael was at Santa Clara with Paul Locatelli as Paul was envisioning this whole idea of a conference which coincided with, I think, Santa Clara's 150th anniversary. And Michael suggested that he think about linking this to Decree 4 of the 32nd General Congregation of the Society of Jesus, which had stated that all where every work that the Jesuits were involved in should be engaged in the service of faith, of which the promotion of justice is an inextricable component. And to focus that on the universities and colleges, because we had never looked at ourselves through that lens. How was Decree 4 playing out on our campuses? And so that really became the guiding framework. And then we also had the great support of Charlie Kerry, who was then the president of the AJCU. We had a lot of movers and shakers and idea people that really gave rise to the work we ended up doing. And
Dave,
so the
can I ask you,
yeah,
to say the committee itself?
yeah, I am.
Great.
That's where I was going to go.
Perfect.
Okay. And so the committee, original six, or the six essential, original members of the planning committee were myself and my colleague Patrick Byrne from BC, Jerry and Art McGovern from Detroit Mercy, and Bill Spohn and Paul Woolley from Santa Clara. So they were the six.
Right. And then this is my little attempt to make sure history has all parts to it. So you all notice that there were six men, Jesuit, obviously Jerry there and Art. And they sat around the table one day and said, what's missing from our group? And they said, well, we don't have anybody from a school not Jesuit university. Don't you think we should have somebody who might have a different perspective? And they said, yeah. But, we're missing something. We have no non-male. We need a non-male on this committee. Well, the two people you're looking at in my little conversation right now are the two who said, well, we know this person named Kathleen Maas Weigert, and she's at Notre Dame. So she does both. She's a non-male and she's from a non-Jesuit. That's how I got on this wonderful committee, and I've loved it ever since. Thank you for asking me guys to be part of it. So Dave, you have probably some more things that go on with the history of this gathering.
I really don't have too much to add to that. I just want to reemphasize that the whole nature of the conference content being dictated from below. And even in all the years I spent continuing on the committee, we tried to present a framework, but never dictate content. And I think that's a real critical component for this whole thing to continue to go forward.
Totally do. In fact, it's a nice segue, Dave, for the three of us to say, what are one or two takeaways from these conferences? And as you look forward, what's a hope you have as we continue this work? So Jerry, maybe I could start with you, please.
Yeah, one thing looking back at the origins of the conference, they were mostly academics. So they'd be deans, faculty members, and others. And then we'd have some people from student services, student affairs, that sort of thing. I think, looking at the list of people who have been active more recently, I think it's kind of devolved into that group. Now, there's an advantage to that, in that you do get best practices, but there's a real disadvantage. And that is the original idea of the conference was to have this impregnate the whole university, have everybody involved in this, especially teachers, who have direct contact with faculty. So, I guess my hope is that out of this 20th anniversary conference, we can begin to recruit some of the faculty folks that have some interest in these issues to become part of this.
That's great, Jerry. Thank you. Dave, how about you?
I'll comment on, I'll make two comments. The first is a hope that I believe has already been realized. But although I never harbored this hope when we started, that this has continued for so long and involves so many people. At the Santa Clara conference, you guys might remember that afterwards, all the people in attendance essentially said to all of us on the committee, okay, so now what? Because this can't be the end of this. And so We hadn't anticipated that. We thought we were one and done. And here we are 20 some years later, still continuing. And so that's a hope I didn't even know I had. But then as it continued, of course, I've seen it grow. And my hope connected to that is that that doesn't stop, because I think it's so critical for our work. The other hope is that it supplements what Jerry just said about faculty involvement. And it would be the hope, not just that more faculty get interested in participating in these, but that there are more rewards built into the institutional structures of our campuses to encourage that in terms of tenure and promotion considerations, so that people get credit as faculty members for joining in with all of the rest of people who do these things, and it counts for them. It's not something that's relegated to the side for them.
Terrific. Yeah, when you said the one and done, it made me think we did decide we'd have another one a couple of years later, a much smaller one, and we had it at Loyola in Chicago. And two people from each of the universities came, and I still remember saying, and I still believe to this day, I salivate just thinking about 28 colleges and universities coming together around a commitment to justice. It was awesome to me. I've met so many wonderful people over the years that convinced me that it's happening. It's going to continue, because volunteers know that this is key to what it means to be a Jesuit college and university in the 21st century. And that's thrilling. So my hope is that more and more of you who are watching pick up the mantle and carry it forward, so that people come, students, staff, faculty, administrators, come to our schools because of this commitment to justice. So thank you for what you've done. We look forward to having conversations with you in person at some point, but in the meantime, enjoy the conference, and maybe we'll see you in a Zoom meeting soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.